when I was in jail, I actually I remember I was crying and just saying, God, I'm either going to kill myself because I feel like a worthless piece of junk, or I need you to personally prove yourself real and like powerful in my life. And I remember making a commitment to God and saying, like, if you prove yourself real some way or another, I will pursue you.
Welcome back, everyone, to Ryan and Dirk Lunch Podcast. We've got a pretty special guest to us, and probably to a lot of people that follow us both. So we're pleased and welcome to have Nick Schippers here with us.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to say too that this is somebody. There's a few people that have had huge impacts in my life, but this is a man that, from my young 20s, has had one of the greatest impacts in my life and who I am today. So I'm really honored that you decided to join us today, but also like want to give credit where credit's due, to say thank you for how God's used you in my life. But on top of like not just being an amazing man, it's somebody that has been in ministry and also been a huge impact on my life, but also in business, you're somebody that's very successful too. So with that being said, will you tell us your story. Tell us any part of your testimony that I think is really powerful, and how we got to know each other, how you ended up working in church and everything like that.
Yeah. So I grew up going to a CRC church, and it was go to church every Sunday twice and go to church on Wednesday night. So I had a foundation of understanding the gospel, but not personally. I never really pursued God in the sense of like I really want to know Christ. So I got into some trouble at the end of high school where I started partying and drinking, hanging out with people that weren't the best influence. I'm not really blaming them. I mean, it was my choice, but I ended up getting two, they're called OWIs, basically drunk driving charges. I got one and I got another one about 17 months later, and it was a probation. I was on probation, so that was a violation of my probation, and the judge said, you can just sit in jail. So I had to sit in jail and wait for a court hearing, and honestly, like it was probably the darkest period of my life, because the first 3 days were pretty much a fog, and just thinking like when I get out of here, I felt like a major screw up in life. I felt like I let my parents down, my friends, maybe not my friends, but my parents, my siblings who cared a lot about me, other relatives that have been praying for me to get out of my addictions. And so the first 3 days I was thinking, when I get out of here, how do I just end this? Like, I wanted to take my own life. And I think it was probably day 2.5, day 3, where they put you in a holding cell. So I was in a holding cell, just this cold concrete cell with one toilet, no barricade for any privacy, and like 14 grown men. So like, talk about humility, like you got to go use the toilet, and like what they would do is they give you these, we used to call them force blankets in the Ottawa County Jail. You try to warm up with them and you just feel itchy, like they're terrible. So like an experience of having to go in the toilet, and then you drape the blanket over your head, just to like, not that people, just some form of privacy, right? And jail, I'll say jail is not prison. I mean, people say like, were you scared for your life? And I'm like, no, I actually think, because I'm a taller guy, I actually think more people are afraid of me than I was afraid of people in jail. But that experience, kind of the first couple days, they move you out of the holding tank if you're going to be basically like, they move you to, they call it general population. So you go into a cell with one bunkie, they call them bunkies. And then it's like, I believe I was in like B pod, which is like 20-hour lockdown. So you only get 4 hours free outside of your cell. And that was a time where I just sat in my cell, and I remember specifically, like, when I was growing up, my mom, I would always say, Mom, I know it's important for us to read the Bible. Like, my parents always emphasize that, like, read the Bible. You have to talk with God, pray with God, and read Scripture and learn. And I was like, I don't really know what to do, Mom. And she would always encourage me. Like, as a kid, I didn't like reading, and I didn't like school. So she would say, I always feel encouraged by the Psalms. So I knew the Psalms were in the middle of the Bible. So when I was younger, I used to do this thing where I'd flip open just to a random Psalm.
Yeah, same.
And read like a few verses and be like, well, that's good enough. Like, that's good for my day. And I got my little dose of God. And when I was in jail, I actually I remember I was crying and just saying, God, I'm either going to kill myself because I feel like a worthless piece of junk, or I need you to personally prove yourself real and like powerful in my life. And I remember making a commitment to God and saying, like, if you prove yourself real some way or another, I will pursue you. Like I will commit to learning who you are and try to give my life to you, because right now my life's worth nothing. I just keep making mistakes.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and then I did my little flip the Bible open trick, and for the first time in my life, and people think, well, that's kind of crazy, but I'm not advising people to do that, but I did it.
Yeah.
And it was Proverbs 10:1, which says a wise son brings joy to his father, and a foolish son grief to his mother.
Wow.
For me, the backstory to that is my mom's dad struggled with alcohol for a really long portion of his life, and especially when she was the oldest and she had 6 siblings.
Yeah.
So like they went through a lot of chaos when she was growing up, and she had to be like the oldest, kind of like the second mom, doing the laundry, changing the siblings' diapers, taking care of the house, and then she had a dad that was like, she knew her dad loved her, but he also had this chronic addiction going on, this alcohol addiction. So when I read that verse that said a wise son brings joy to his father, a foolish son grief to his mother, I realized like the magnitude of me constantly lying to my parents, going out drinking when I said I was doing other things, getting in trouble, and them losing, having sleepless nights thinking I'm going to crash my truck into a tree or I'm going to die. Like that was the impact I was having on my family.
And what are the chances that you happen to open your Bible to that verse, being in jail, putting your family through that at that time too? Like, what are the chances of that?
Right. And people can say it was a coincidence, but for me, and maybe it's a coincidence for 7 billion other people, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Like it was really profound. It was direct to me, and it was super applicable to, and that was really what I needed for the start of the journey, to say, okay, you are real. Like I remember getting goosebumps. Like this is real. God is real, and I'm going to devote myself to trying to learn more about Him and kind of give my life over to Him. So
from there, how did you start working? Because when I met you, you were already working at the church. You were a pastor at that church. How did you get from jail to being a staff member and leading the college ministry at that church?
Right. So when I was in jail, my brother-in-law Josh and my sister Heather, he had been running his own business, and he felt called into ministry. So he went to Grace Bible College, was getting his degree. I think he was like in his last year at that point, while I'm in jail, right? And when I was 18, I worked for my dad, who owns an excavating company. And he had told me, we're actually going to move to a different house, but it would be wise for you to buy our house on land contract. And they were fortunate to have that ability. I was fortunate that they could do that for me. Yeah. Which, from an investment standpoint, I look back and I go, thank you, Dad. Yeah. Because he's like, you're making the income to make this payment. Or I think they set the interest rate at like 2.5% or 2%. It was like,
please bring back those days.
And those are the days Dirk is praying for. Like, please bring back those 2.75% interest rates, which we might never see again, right?
Yeah.
But so like that was the point where, so I had a house, like 18 years old, working a job, and I wasn't mature enough to take care of a house and landscaping. And at that age, in high school, everything was just sports. Yeah. I graduated, I lost sports out of my life because I was going to go to college, but I had an injury that affected me going and playing football. And I just started partying because there was a high in sports for me. I had a high of like going out, playing under the lights, playing football, basketball, baseball. And I needed something I thought I needed something to replace that, right? And so that's where the drinking and all that came in. So how did I get to ministry? So back on point, while I was in jail, since I had only been paying on the land contract for a short period of time, my brother-in-law and my sister, they sold their house, and they weren't looking to just go quick buy another house. And he was putting a bunch of money into Bible college and all that. So my dad said, well, Nick's an idiot and he's in jail, and we still hold the note on the land contract, and he's hardly paid anything off. So, and he said, well, you guys move into the upstairs and Nick can just live in his basement, and you can pay him some rent, which I think their rent was like $300 a month. I still kick myself for not charging them more. But looking back, like them being in my house was just all a part of God's plan, because he was not only in ministry, but my sister had a huge heart for where I was, along with my other siblings. But the fact that I was living with her every day and living with Josh every day, and then their kids who were super young at the time, every day it's not like they forced me like, well, you should try to tweak your life or do this or, he would talk to me about God and talk to me about what he's doing in ministry, talk to me about life, even at that point, I remember still having an Xbox, and this isn't my ploy. Like, I know there's people that game and they can do that in moderation, but like I had an Xbox and I loved to just go down, and if I was feeling tired or I get done with the day at work, I'd go down and play my Xbox for like 3 hours, right? And I haven't had an Xbox for probably 15, 16, I don't even know, a long time, but I remember him confronting me and saying, man, you spend a lot of time on that Xbox, like, you could do so much more with your life if you would focus it on something more productive. And I remember thinking, man, you're a jerk. Like, I like my Xbox.
Yeah.
And I look back now and I think, man, what a childish thing,
I think those are extremely important too. Like, those are, like, looking back on those, someone put a fork in the road for you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
For sure. And I think, so that was kind of the impetus to, I was still going to the church I grew up in, and I give a lot of credit to the pastor who was there, Pastor Dave, because he was actually kind of mentoring me and trying to work me through some of, like, studying scripture and talking about my identity being in Christ. And that was like the beginning point, but then I was still dabbling in drinking before I went to jail. Well, when I got out of jail, so it was September 15, 2007, and I know that for a fact because Michigan beat Notre Dame 38-0. And I was just riding high. Like, I got to party hard, right? And my Notre Dame buddy friends, were at the party, and we're just rubbing it in, right? So, but I drove, and I thought I was going to go get some more beer, and I got pulled over. And that was the end. Like, so I went to jail, and then I got out, and I was living in my own house, almost like I had parents now, right? And they invited me to church. And what happened was, my parents were on vacation. I was on, it's called ISP, Intensive Supervised Probation. So I couldn't leave my house before 6 to go to work, and I had to be home by 8 o'clock at night. And my probation officer could show up to my door at any moment, just knock, and I had to be to the door within like 2 minutes time. Or she would just leave and write me up, and it'd be a violation. I go back to jail. So she'd be at the door, and she would just, the first time, I had a meeting with her at the Ottawa County offices off Port Sheldon. And then she showed up to the door, and I had this thing that I had to plug into the wall, and it would literally go like a siren, like in my room, and lights would flash. Like, I would wake up like an epileptic shock, just like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And I would run upstairs. The first night, I was so paranoid, I moved my mattress to the front hallway of my house. I was like, if I fail, I'm going back to jail. So she would just stick the breathalyzer in my face and make me blow it, and then she'd go, well, no alcohol, have a good night. And she'd just leave. I'm like,
No small
like, what, are you a robot? Like, are you a human being? So long story short, I know that was like kind of a rabbit trail, but they lived with me. They invited me to church. I started going to the church they were going to. And I met the senior pastor who was really good friends with my brother-in-law, Josh, and who actually is now my pastor, my father-in-law. So a double whammy there. And so I got involved, and I started volunteering on Saturdays. A lot of the staff members, still to this day, some of those guys are like some of my best friends. And they started investing in my life, and it just kind of was a natural progression where I got to the point where I was working for my dad. I felt like I was being called to go to Bible college, and I was volunteering at the church. I started going to Bible college, which was a difficult choice because I had driver responsibility fees. I didn't have a license for 2 years, so I had to get rides everywhere. I felt like I was 14.
Yeah.
And I was going to Bible college, and then my father-in-law, who obviously at that point, it was way before I dated his daughter and got married, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
He was the pastor of the church, Pastor Gary, and he actually said to me, I want to bring on 1 or 2 interns, and I'm giving you this opportunity first with one other person.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's your choice. You have like 3 days. Give me an answer by Friday. After that, it expires, and I'm gonna find somebody else, And he just wanted me to be serious about it, so he gave me a window of time.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So I thought and I prayed about it, and I I actually ended up having to go talk to my dad because I'm like, I'm going to have to divide my time now because I need to work and make money with you, but I want to do this internship. So the internship was paid, not highly paid, but it was paid.
Yeah.
And so I started an internship, and honestly, I think I went into about a year of the internship, and I just out of the blue, Pastor Gary was like, I think we're gonna have you lead the college ministry. And I like my heart sunk. I was just like,
Yeah.
I don't know the Bible well enough. I'm not old enough. I had all these excuses, almost like Moses in the book of Exodus. Like, I'm not a good speaker. What?
Yeah.
But he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself.
Yeah.
And then from there, I started leading the college ministry, finished my degree, became a pastor, and I mean, yeah.
That's amazing. Can you tell us about the day that you accepted Christ? Tell us about how that happened. Did you think that you were saved before that? Explain how that process went.
Yeah, so like I said, I grew up in church. I knew a lot about the Bible. I actually went to Christian school through 8th grade as well. I went to Bork Hill Christian, a class of 34 kids, right?
Yes.
Our class was the biggest class at Bork Hill Christian. Yeah, and we were the best, right? Like our basketball team was 8-0 every year. So when I accepted Christ, it was March 30, 2008, and I remember specifically because I had been going to church there. It was Wellspring at the time. I was going to church, and I was going to Bible study on Monday nights, and then I was going to the college ministry as well. And I was at a men's Bible study on Monday night, and Pastor Gary was preaching about, I don't even know that he was specifically talking about salvation, but toward the end, he kind of wrapped it up and just said, I want to give an opportunity for those of you who are doubting whether you know Christ or that you're going to actually spend an eternity with God and be in heaven. And it hadn't weighed on me to that degree, but for some reason that night, I just sat there and I knew the Spirit was telling me, you haven't actually accepted Christ. Like the Spirit, I knew the Spirit had been working in my life to bring me to that point, but
Yeah.
I just sat there and my pride kept my hand down. I kid you not. So like that's a testimony for people that are like,
Yeah.
I think I'm saved, but I'll be okay. But like, just raise your hand. Like,
Yes.
and the crazy thing is I kept my hand down because I'm like, I'm good. I've gone to church. I've studied the Bible. I know what Jesus did, and I know,
Yeah.
but I knew that I should raise my hand. Didn't raise my hand. At the end, there was another guy who was a college-age kid. His name is Jason Horges.
Yeah.
And he went into the office that night with Chad Timmer, who was one of the pastors at that point. And he went into the office and talked with Chad and accepted Christ. So I'm standing in a circle of a bunch of other guys, right? And I remember specifically who was there in the group, but he comes out and we're just shooting the breeze. It's like 10:30 at night. It's late, right? We're just
Yeah.
hanging out, talking, and Jason comes out and I look and I see Jason. I didn't see him leave the room, and I'm going, like, from everything I knew, Jason knew the Bible really well, is really on fire for God. And like he comes out and I'm looking going, he didn't go in there to accept Christ. Like there's no way. He had to have been saved.
Huh.
And he came out, I'm like, and I kind of looked and Chad's like, Jason just accepted Christ as a savior. And I'm like, okay, hold on a minute. Now I really know I should have raised my hand. And I'm not telling people to compare themselves to others because it's a personal thing, right? Like, you got to know that you're saved and sealed by the Holy Spirit. But
Yes.
that was like God saying, man, you need to do this. You need to accept Christ. And so I still was prideful enough where I'm just like, another time I'll bring it up, like, or I'll raise my hand at another invitation. And we're standing there and Pastor Gary goes out of the blue. He goes, I've just been thinking, Nick, are you sure that you're saved? And I'm like, like, what the heck? Like, just, why are you picking on me, bro? Like, chill out, And then I said, I'm not sure. And that was what it took. Like, God knew my pride was the walls of my pride were so tall that he just needed something direct.
Yes.
And then he asked the guy next to me, his name is Drew Langstrat. Drew's like, I'm not sure. So the same night, so I remember Jason got saved, I got saved, Drew Langstrat got saved the same night.
Wow.
And it was March 30, 2008 at like 11 something at night.
It's amazing.
So
I thought you said something really important about friends earlier, and I think it's and I only say this because I think it's an attribute and a characteristic of you too. You said some of your best friends today are still some of those people that you met
Right.
through your ministry walk.
Yeah.
Something that I've noticed about you, Nick, that I really admire is in that you maybe didn't know this, but I was leaning on, maybe Dirk and others were leaning on too, is through those, because I started going to Wellspring when I was 21.
Right.
I liked leading, I liked those things, but what you did really well is when you learned something, it was like instantly processed, and then you started showing it to other people. So, and I think from those people that I think that you're still friends with, I think they all collectively did that with you, and that's something that ministry has done. And I think that's part of something that you still do today. Is like you never withhold anything. Like even what you're sharing right now, it's like
Right.
it's a huge, like, my pride could have stopped me, right? It's like what learning moments, and like those are great reflections for us too. And I think those are great learning principles that I've seen that you do from a leadership perspective do really well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and so I just, that's thinking back on that. I just wanted to share that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're somebody that you're so talented. I told you that. For those that are watching, he's honestly one of the most gifted preachers and speakers and leaders. And so I'm grateful that God brought you into my. I don't say it to hype you up, but like honestly, like I'm grateful. I feel honored that God put me under your ministry, under Pastor Gary's ministry for the time that I needed it in my life. And talent alone doesn't produce results.
No, absolutely.
You're also somebody that inspires me because you're driven. And you've shown that even outside of ministry in your business. What is your why? Why are you so driven? Why are you so hardworking? Where other people maybe aren't as much. What
Right.
has pushed you to that point, and what has made you that so passionate about everything you do?
Yeah, I think it's multifold. In my life, I can remember from a young age, like my dad waking me up at 6 a.m. on Saturdays and being like, "We're splitting wood today," or "We're gonna go down and work in the shop, and I need a hand," or "We're gonna put the pump in to hook the sprinkler system." Whatever it was, like there was always some kind of project.
6 in the morning on Saturday?
6 in the morning on Saturdays, yes.
It's like child
and
abuse.
like, yeah, it is. It is, yeah. I actually filed a lawsuit with my parents. Yep. It was terrible. And I was after I built my cry closet. But I can look back at that, and I actually think there was a period of my life where I thought, man, like sometimes my dad or my parents in general can be kind of like, they're so disciplined that it's kind of, they're hard on me, right? Like and I think almost every kid has some of that if their parents are driven people.
Yep.
I look back at it and I just go, that was like my form of the like childhood military that I needed. I think the discipline that a lot of people find that when they join the Marines or whatever, that maybe they didn't have the best upbringing. I had that from like day one, and it wasn't militant. Like my dad wasn't cussing me out like drill instructors do. He was a very encouraging and loving father, and my mom is the most amazing, loving mom you could have. But they both, and not even just my dad, but like being lazy was not accepted at all. Like, and I think there was frustration in that because every teenager wants to lay on the couch and sleep in and do things like. And I went through those phases, but it was just like my dad would be like, "I'll buy you breakfast, but we're working all day long, and there's no option. Your hands are cold. Well, go warm them up by the exhaust of the the truck or whatever, and you just warm them up a little bit and you go back to it. My gloves are wet. Well, work with no gloves, And so there was a level of toughness that I think maybe it's made me like put more wear and tear and stress on my life and my body at times because that mindset. But it's just carried over to, and the other thing about that is I remember playing like rock and football sports and stuff like that, and I would get hurt or offended by like a teammate was mocking me because of my arm pads or things like that. And I remember going back, like I switched from playing at Zeeland to Allendale at a young age, and I like thought I had made friends. And one time I went to a game and I get out and my dad got me these big, I played running back and linebacker. Yeah. And my dad's like, "You're always getting all these bruises on your arms. Let's go to play it against sports." He buys me these arm pads that are meant for like a senior in high school, And I'm like,
against sports. Tell us about Dutch without.
So like, yeah, so like I'm in like 4th, 5th grade, and I'm thinking I made all these friends at Allendale, and I get up, and I get like 20 feet. I'm walking over to hang out with my new friend group, right?
Yep.
And they're like hitting each other with these pretend arm pads, and I'm like, who I thought were my friends are all mocking me right now. I remember going back and sitting in the car, getting in I think my parents had like a Tahoe back then, and I get in the back seat of the Tahoe and I'm crying.
Yeah.
Like, we're getting ready to go to the away game, the football game, and I'm supposed to be, and I'm one of the better players, but I'm in there just balling,
Yes.
And remember my dad, like, what's wrong? Like, and my mom was always like, Jay, settle down. Let's, like, what's going on? And I shared, they're mocking me, and and I remember my dad just like, well, who cares what they think? So as a kid, that's hard to process. But as you get going through life, you start to realize that it's not going to help me to care so much about what other people think and the haters, the people that want to drag you down. So that's one part, is the toughness. I know I've gone on forever here.
That's good.
Cool.
The other part I would say is just like I was obsessive in sports, and like I would watch, like there's a movie called Michael Jordan's Playground. Every summer, every day in the summer, I would wake up, watch that video, and then I'd go practice for like 3 hours in the driveway. And I don't know if that was just instilled from the way I was raised, or it's just I always wanted to achieve something great. And clearly I didn't have the DNA and the to be like a world-class NBA player, a football player, or whatever. But I think anything I do in life, I've always believed, like kind of like I study a lot of founders, and like Steve Jobs has said while he was alive, like, if I'm going to produce crap, then I'm not going to produce anything.
Yeah.
So like he wanted to produce the best possible product. He didn't want to be IBM. He wanted to be Apple. Like he wanted to make the Macintosh. He wanted to make, and look at everything we have that we still use today.
Right.
So like in my life, I've had people say, well, you could make more money and do not as quality of a job, or sub a lot of stuff out, and there is an element of that's good delegation, but there's another element of it. I take pride in the quality, and the drive I have drives me toward like some form of perfection, which is good and bad, I guess. But
Well, on that business practice as well, because we have a lot of real estate mortgage lenders, business owners, and just tradespeople that are in our network. So from your business, you've gone from being a solo practitioner to leading teams. You've led teams at the church, and you've inspired people. As a business owner, what kind of advice would you have for someone that's like, I can't do this by myself anymore? What kind of advice would you give someone that needs to expand?
Right. I think that one of the things I learned in my own business, and I don't know that this is the model for everyone, but what I've found is I try to find the best people for the thing I don't want to do. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that may sound super simple, but it's just proven itself true, because I've tried to just take a couple high schoolers and train them from the ground up. Like, I'm going to teach you how to paint, how to trim, how to do renovations and stuff like that. And a lot of those people, not that we shouldn't be training people up, but I find that, 1 out of every 10 will actually endure the 3 years of sweeping floors and picking up garbage and, working in the attic, trying to blow insulation, all that stuff, all the dirty work that I had to do, and I still do, to prove to my team that I'm still there. I'll do it at times, not all the time, but like, it's hard to get them through that. And I've actually hired, so one of my guys actually just moved to South Dakota, which God bless him and what he's doing, but it was kind of a bummer because he's one of my best guys. But like, I hired 2 guys right off the bat. The one was a high-end custom trim guy. The other guy, it was a framer, and he owned his own business for years and years, and was a home builder. So like, I went and found people that had the knowledge for the things that I had some knowledge in that, and I knew I could do it, but I wasn't like top-end elite and proficient. And I don't, we only have so much time. So like, I just empowered them. So like, one of my guys, Scott Fowler, who works for me, man, I can just, he'll ask me a question, how do you want it done? What do you want it to look like? Or, how do you want this closet framed? Or whatever the question is, I can just talk to him on the phone in the morning. The rest of the day, I trust he's working his butt off, and he's going to do it the way he would think I'd want it done. He treats it like his own business, and it to the best of his ability.
How would you say, you said you look for the best. What is the best at what they do? How do you determine what the best is Is
Right.
it just skill? Is it character? How do you balance that?
It's got to be a combination. I think it's so. I've always told people when they ask how do you determine hiring people, and I won't say every hires fit this what do you call it, criteria.
Yeah.
But I always say, like, if I couldn't, like, say there was an emergency, and I have parents, in-laws, and siblings that I can default to, so I would never need this.
Yeah.
But say there was an emergency for some reason, I had to leave my kids with my employee. If I can't leave my kids with the employee,
That's good. Yeah.
why would I hire them?
Yeah.
Because there's such a level of trust. Like, my kids are my most valued possession. Like, my wife and my kids, I would do anything, right? Like, somebody breaks into your home and you would fight to the death to defend them.
Right.
Well, the same thing is, like, if I could leave my kids and trust them, not that I need to, but if it was needed,
Yep.
then I know that they could be a long-term employee. And I think the other thing is, like, clearly they need to have a skill set that fits. You know, you don't just hire, I'm not going to hire a farmer. I renovate homes.
Yeah.
Like, what would I do that for? But,
Yep.
like, they have to have the skill set needed. But, where was I going with that? The thing that I found is if I see somebody as a long-term investment, that's the better way to go.
Yes.
Like, if I'm just looking like, I just got to fill this need, and I hire somebody and it works out for 9 months, usually it just ends up coming to an end. It's like, well, you go do your thing out. And it's usually on good terms. I try to treat people
Yes.
well.
Yep.
But, like, if I see it as a longer-term investment, that's usually the best case.
Yeah.
And then I actually treat them like they're valued as the long-term investment. Like, if I buy a rental and I want to own it for 30 years, I'm going to try to keep continual upkeep, make sure the tenants are happy, the sink breaks, get it fixed right away, needs a new roof. Like, it's just the same thing with people. Like, I'm going to try to give them bonuses. I'm going to try to give them incentives. I'm going to try to encourage them, take them to lunch, do things that I feel make them feel like they're valued by me as the owner.
What would you determine? I got a couple more questions here. I know that we got to wrap it up, but what would you determine is a good leader? How would you define a good leader?
Man, that's tough. I told myself not to stall, because on podcasts, if you stall, it means you don't know what you want to say. So I think a good leader is somebody who is, they have to care about their own well-being enough to make boundaries for, like, don't let my employees or my team abuse me, because then you're tearing yourself down and you no longer can lead.
Yeah.
Like, so I was listening to a podcast. I listened to Craig Rochelle Leadership Podcast is like one of the best leadership podcasts in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was listening to his podcast. So this isn't original with me, but he basically said that if you're not leading yourself, you can't lead anybody else. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've through my years of ministry is that always pops back in my head is I used to listen to a lot of John Piper messages back in the day. Not so much now. I don't think he preaches regularly, but he used to talk all the time about you need to, in order to have daily faith to believe that God's working in your life, like, you have to preach the gospel to yourself daily. And so I think not just in, like, my spiritual health, I need to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ to myself and remember what he's done for me. But in business, I need to be preaching what I want to see in myself and my future, my business. I need to preach that to myself first, so that I'm emulating it, and then I can lead those people. I think that's part of what makes a good leader, is to be proactively leading yourself.
Yeah, I love that. And then last question, I'll put you on the spot here. In 30 years, you look back on your life, and God willing, you're still around. What would need to happen, or what would your life look like to say that was successful, a successful 30 years, or a successful life to look back on? How would you determine success?
That's a
in life?
humdinger.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and then we'll wrap it up.
I think the thing that I've focused on more recently in my business and my life is I've actively in my business, since I haven't been in full-time ministry, I see every opportunity of working for a client or every interaction as an opportunity to find out where that person's at and to try to invest in their life, like to actually care about them spiritually, but in any sense. Like, and I think that proves itself out in some of the clients that are like, I had a client who cried. She's a widow, right? I think she's like in her early 70s. she cried when I finished the job. And I was like, this is kind of awkward. I don't know what to say, right? And
Yeah.
she said, can I adopt you? And I'm not trying to brag about myself, but she goes, can I adopt you as a son? And I'm like, well, God already did that. So no, I didn't say that, but I just thought, well, I'm honored. I'm honored. And I said, she's like, come by just to say hi if you're ever in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And she's referred me to like 5 other clients, and 2 or 3 of them are widows. And it's crazy because like I have a friend in Allendale actually who had just finished a job for this summer, and I just went over Sunday afternoon just to hang out. I said, I got like 45 minutes. My wife's taking a nap, kids are hanging out.
Yeah.
I'm coming over because I promised him before the snow would be falling that we're gonna sit on his deck and just talk. Because he lost his wife, so I don't mess with the mic, but and he's got 3 kids, and they can't always get around to talk to him, and so like when I look back, I think that every possible interaction, everything that I do was not centered on my own gain, my own future. I actually think a lot of times we forget that investing in other people will automatically produce the future that we desire.
Yes.
Even in ministry, there'd be times where I'd feel like, man, I feel really down, or I feel depressed, or am I even having any impact? And God always showed to me that, like, if you take the first step of not sitting in self-pity, but to just say, I'm just gonna shoot a text or make a phone call or hang out with somebody, just try to encourage somebody else who's struggling.
Yes.
I'd always leave those meetings or those phone calls just thinking, I feel encouraged. Like,
100%. Yes.
the other thing I would say is I've come to the point where everything I do in business is to achieve a goal of enough lifestyle freedom to spend valuable time with my kids,
Yes.
teach them about Jesus, teach them the principles of life and hard work, and to be able to do mission work and to be able to preach the word, whether that's just hanging out with friends or leading Bible study or whatever that may be. That's the end goal, is to be successful enough in business, to create enough lifestyle freedom to do the things that I'm deeply passionate about. That made me look back and say, I'm glad what God gave me the opportunity to do, and I'm proud of the life that He allowed me to live.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, it's definitely been an honor and a pleasure for us to have you on our podcast. I think this will be our 14th episode. So yeah,
Awesome.
we're opening it up. It's good to
Yeah.
have you
Yeah,
on. And,
Thank you.
if the people watching this want to get a hold of you, if they're like, I know about Nick's work, I know what you're doing, tell them a little bit about the jobs that you do, or if you're looking, like, if someone wanted to get a hold of you, how should they get a hold of you?
Right. I mean, I don't know if you can just tag it with like business info or whatever, but so I'm on Facebook, Nicholas J. Schippers. I don't know that Facebook and Instagram. I've tried to slowly develop that, but it's not like they aren't my biggest ways of generating business. I can give you that info for my Instagram if you need it afterward. But so my primary business is NL development, which we do kitchen remodels. I do a lot of flips. Last 3 years I've done 25 house flips.
Nice.
I own a handful of Airbnbs and some long-term rentals. So we do that through that. And then I have Schippers Painting, which I'm constantly painting homes, interior, exterior, as well as commercial projects. And yeah, a lot of the things that I really enjoy are the creative design aspect. I'd love to get more into that. I have some stuff online people can check out, even on my Facebook too, in regard to some of that stuff that I've done. So
There's not a single painter I don't know that at some part of their body, whatever they have, if you were to zoom in on Nick's hands right now, you'd still see paint on those hands.
yeah.
So
Yep.
we loved having you on. Thank you so much for doing it.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. So thanks everyone. Make it a great day.
Thanks.